Hi, and welcome to the art of rebounding. It's been called the most efficient, most effective form of exercise yet devised by man. It's been called the closest thing to the fountain of youth. It's even been called a miracle exercise. That's a pretty grand claim. But let's face it, a miracle is simply something we don't understand. We don't know how it works, we don't know why it works, and that's why we see it as a miracle. But maybe if we understood it better, it wouldn't seem as miraculous. We'd almost expect the results that we were to get. Rebounding is used by people of all ages and all levels of health and fitness, from the young to the elderly, from people who simply want to get more energy, to people who are recovering from injury and illness, to people simply in the day who are wanting to boost their focus, maybe business people who want to get more creative. It's even used by extreme sports professionals, people who want to take their game to the next level. To understand how rebounding benefits the body, the first thing we have to understand is how the body actually works. Here's a question for you. If you had to improve your health and vitality by just changing one thing, what would you do? For most people, it's a very simple answer. I need more energy. How do you feel when you wake up in the morning? Do you have all the energy and vitality to really live your day to the full? When you come home at night, are you wiped out, drained and exhausted, and now you still have to spend family time? What about if you could improve your energy simply just by a little bit to give you that go during the day, to make you enjoy your day more? The big question we have to ask is, where do we get that energy from? Because most of us don't understand how our body works, we simply can't take responsibility for our own health. That usually lies in the hands of someone outside of ourselves. Here's another question for you. If you had healthy cells, what would you have? The obvious answer, of course, is you'd have a healthy body. So what we really need to understand is, how does our body work from a cellular level? All of us began as one cell, and apparently we have anything up to 100 trillion different cells making up this wonderful thing we call our body. But very few of us really understand how those cells actually work. What we're going to show you with this DVD is, if you can understand how the cells work, how you can get them to work better, then maybe you'd have more health, you'd have more vitality, you'd have more energy, and you'd understand the miracle that we call rebounding. What most people don't realize is our bodies are electrical. In other words, if you're seeing me right now, there's an electrical thing happening between your eyes and your brain, so that you're forming a picture. If you're hearing me, if you're sitting up straight, your muscles are working. In fact, every single part of your body works in a sort of electrical kind of way. But where does the electricity come from? What we now understand is electricity is literally generated by our cells. In fact, I like to think of our cells as little batteries. Every single battery in my body contributing towards the power that I have during my day. In other words, if your energy flags during the day, basically your batteries are running down. So what we need to know is, how do those cells generate energy? How do they lose their energy, and can we recharge them again? I want you to imagine 3 or 4 little circles, kind of like little peas in a pod, parallel by 2 lines. I'm going to put my hand like this, so you have one line on top, the little circles in the center, and another line underneath. Now, this could be anywhere in your body. We call it a cell structure. The little round circles are your cells, and the 2 lines are 2 very important vessels. The top line is a blood vessel. I like to think of blood as delivering the groceries. Groceries come to the cells and provide the cells with everything they need in order to do their job and to produce the power that we need to see, to think, to move, and whatever else that part of the body needs to do. Now, most people don't realize, but those groceries are extremely important, and there is one that is more important than anything else, and that's oxygen. Oxygen is your most important grocery. Now, the other little vessel is called a lymph vessel. Now, if you can imagine, you have a dinner party. At the end of the party, everyone's had a great time. Somebody has to do the dishes. In the body, the lymphatic vessel does the dishes. In other words, after every experience within those cells, the lymph drains and clears it out so that it's ready, if you like, for the next dinner party. Now, the way that the body works is, it takes this oxygen that it receives from the blood vessels, and it burns glucose, which comes from all of our major food groups, and it produces a fuel known as ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Now, that's a big word, but the simplest way to think of it is, cars run on BP, we run on ATP. Okay? And ATP allows us to produce this power, this energy, if you like, at a cellular level, so that we can live healthily and happily every single day of our lives. Now, in order for your cells to get oxygen, they need to be in a very specific state. This is called the dry state. Basically what it means is, those 2 little vessels, your blood vessel and your lymph vessel, tightly pack those little cells, kind of like peas in a pod. And that means the oxygen is delivered efficiently and effectively to the cells. They produce the power and they give you the energy to do whatever you need to do. This is why it's so important that you wash your dishes. If that lymph system isn't working, if there's any buildup around those cells, the first thing that changes, you get less oxygen. And the first sign you'll notice is you start losing energy. Now, the number one problem that every single person is dealing with, whether you're losing energy, whether you've got a little bit of aches and pains, suffering from colds and flus, or even going into the more chronic conditions, what we now understand from the medical world is that underneath it all, the prime trigger to this is a lack of oxygen or oxygen deficiency. So here's the question, why are we not getting enough oxygen? It seems that there are 4 primary reasons that we don't get enough oxygen in our day. Number 1 obviously is we don't breathe enough. Good question. Are you watching this video and holding your breath as you listen to what I'm saying? Most people have very erratic breathing habits, so that's a number 1. Number 2, are you getting enough exercise? A lot of people who spend a lot of time sitting tend to have a slower blood circulation. So if we're not getting enough aerobic exercise, maybe we aren't circulating that oxygen enough. Another factor, of course, is food. Certain foods, certain fatty foods, tend to slow the bloodstream down and slow the delivery of oxygen. And then, of course, there's always the environment. Do you spend a lot of time indoors? Are you working with air conditioners, recycling the air? Do you have any green plants around you? Because that obviously is going to give more oxygen. 4 very, very important factors to take note of in your own life. If your lymphatic system is not doing its job properly, your cell environment is going to change. And when your cell environment changes, it goes from a dry state to a wet state. Here's an idea. Imagine you invite someone around for dinner tonight. You make them an extra plate of food and they don't arrive. So you plate it, you keep it in the kitchen, and you do the same the next night. A new plate of food gets put in the kitchen. After 30 days, you've got 30 plates of food waiting for this invited guest. They still don't arrive. What does the first plate look like? Pretty gross. What if this went on for 3 months? For 3 years? What if it went on for 30 years? Each day, one little plate of food being placed in the kitchen. Now, if this was happening in your body at a cellular level, if your lymph system wasn't doing its job and literally waste was slowly building up day after day, changing the very essential dry state into a rather unsightly wet state, what would happen to your health, your energy, and your vitality? The big question is your lymph system working? Are you washing your dishes? Every time your blood delivers groceries, are you making sure that your lymph cleans up afterwards so that you maintain that dry state and you constantly have your energy? Picture a tree. The branches go up into the head, the roots go down into the feet, and the trunk is found in the center of the body. That's a very good analogy for the lymph system. Like the blood system, it's got little vessels going right through into the largest vessels, which are found in the center of your chest, right around here. Now, it also has filtering areas in the groin and the armpit area, which are known as nodes. I like to think of them as the oil filters. And this means that every time the lymph passes through them, it cleans out the waste, it purifies it. So by the time it gets back to here, clean fluid is pumped back into your bloodstream. Now, unfortunately, unlike the blood system, which has a heart to keep it pumping, the lymph system doesn't have a natural pump. It relies on 2 very specific pump-like actions that we have to do every single day to keep our dishes being washed. The first and probably the most important for us is keep moving. We've got to keep the system moving because the lymph system is kind of like a hydraulic system. In the little vessels there are little valves, and as the pressure builds up underneath the valve opens, the fluid moves through, and the valve closes again. And this is happening throughout the body. So movement creates that pressure. Now, unfortunately, that is not enough, because a doctor by the name of Jack Shields did an experiment where he put a camera here and he wanted to know how much movement is necessary to keep that fluid flowing through and pump it back into the bloodstream. He had a guy on a treadmill and the guy was going and his cameras were monitoring, so we know the movement was creating this, if you like, flow through the lymph system. Unfortunately, the camera said nothing is happening here at the ducts. It's not flushing out, it's not emptying out. Now, a very simple analogy that I like to use is a syringe. When you're moving, it's like filling the syringe. You're pulling out the waste from around the cells. But then Dr. Shields showed us that eventually that syringe is going to get full. We need to empty it out. Try this at home. Take a deep breath And notice what happens to this part of your chest. This is what Dr. Shields found when he asked the man on the treadmill to take a deep breath. All of a sudden, the lymph exploded. It was like pushing the plunger of the syringe and emptying it out. Now, if you're like most people, you probably don't breathe deeply regularly. And what happens is the lymph slowly builds up and builds up and builds up until it's literally busting at the seams. Very often this can contribute to colds and those types of experiences where we're literally starting to ooze the fluid out. Most of us spend our day sitting, whether we're driving, whether we're in front of a computer or a TV, and most of us have poor breathing habits. This is an absolute recipe for disaster, because what it means is the first thing that'll change is your cell environment. You get less oxygen and you get less energy from your body. How do you feel at the end of your day? Most of us are exhausted, and now perhaps we understand why. When our cell environment changes from the healthy dry state, the first problem we experience is a lack of oxygen. Our energy levels go down. But now remember all of those plates in the kitchen. Now the wet state is building. It's becoming a little bit murky. And this is a perfect breeding ground for bacteria, viruses, parasites, and all sorts of other tiny little microorganisms that are going to start building house in the body. And these are the things that start leading to various types of inflammation and various other conditions that we experience. So we have a healthy environment, dry state, and we have an unhealthy environment, lack of oxygen, and breeding ground for these little bugs, if you want to call them that. So the first thing we have to do is claim back a sense of responsibility. We have to start recognizing the warning signs that'll tell us our environment is changing. Your first sign, I'm running out of energy. I'm starting to get aches and pains. Most people don't realize is the very first thing we need to be aware of in our lives is we have to change a couple of things. We have to notice, how long are you spending sitting in your day without any movement, without deep breathing? When your energy level changes, you start feeling a little vulnerable. And before you know it, you start looking around you for problems. All of a sudden your relationships change. You might find yourself getting irritated, ratty, depressed. These are warning signs your energy is dropping. You're not as able to respond, if you like, to what's going on around you. The first thing we do is we pick a fight with someone. We make up with someone. We look for energy outside of ourselves. When that doesn't suit us, we then break another great law of health. We start looking for foods and substances that'll artificially lift us. But of course, as we know, we drop down again. And most people cycle between the two. We're either picking a fight or looking for someone to make us feel better, or we're looking for a substance to pick us up, and of course when we drop, change that whole cycle again. The one thing most people are not doing is paying attention to their bodies. The moment your energy changes, ask yourself, is my lymph system working? Am I moving? Am I breathing deeply and regularly? If you're not, that could be the number one reason that leads to all of these other changes in your life. It's time to take responsibility. It's time to wash your dishes. And this is where the rebounder comes in. All exercise is gravity-based. If you were to pick up a weight, then essentially what you're doing is you're increasing the force of gravity by raising your arms upwards with the weights and thereby creating resistance in your muscles so that they respond and get stronger. The same is with a sit-up, the same is with push-ups. In fact, even if you take a step, if your leg muscles are not strong enough to resist gravity, essentially you'll crumble and fall on the floor. Now what's unique about rebounding is that there are two additional forces of gravity that we can harness to use to create more strength in our bodies. These are acceleration and deceleration. Imagine for a moment you're driving in a fast car. You slam your foot on the accelerator. You fly backwards. Your body thinks the planet got heavier. All of a sudden you see a police car, you slam your foot on the brake, and you rush forward. Your body thinks the planet just got heavier. Now when you're working on the rebounder, every time you're going up and down on the rebounder, your body weight is changing. As you go down, your body weight increases. For a moment, just think, if someone were to push on your shoulder, you'd feel this pressure. That's happening throughout your body as you land on the rebound mat. Now, as you go back up again, you reach a point of almost weightlessness before you come down, and your whole body relaxes. Phew, what a relief. And then it comes back down again. Now, if you're working with a rebounder, we're usually working about anything from 100 to 130 beats per minute. That means 100 to 130 times a minute, you're constantly changing the gravity in your body. And what happens is your body responds to that additional pressure. But we've identified 5 major areas where you can really get unique benefits purely from the rebounder. The first, and probably for me the most important, is lymphatic drainage. We've already mentioned the problem that all of us suffer, poor lymph drainage. We're not doing our dishes. Rebounding is seen as possibly the most effective form of lymph exercise. Every time you bounce down on the mat, the pressure builds up in your body, causing the little valves to open, the lymph fluid flows, and then as you rise up again, you reach a point of almost weightlessness, no pressure, the valves close. This is going on about 100 to 120 times a minute. It's kind of like having a masseur in every single part of your body working at the same time. Now, what's also been found, as little as 2 to 3 minutes of a gentle bounce can give you a full lymph drainage, literally flush the fluid right through your body. It's also been found, and this is something most people don't know, that the lymph system is an essential part of your immune system. And by bouncing just for 2 or 3 minutes, what we also do is mobilize the immune cells of the body. If your lymph system is backed up, it's kind of like being in a traffic jam. If the emergency services are trying to get to an accident, but the cars are in the way, they can't get there. In the same way, if your lymph system is backed up, the immune cells might not be able to get to the problem areas, which means that they may develop more than they should naturally do so. The second major benefit is aerobic exercise. Now, some people even call rebounding cellercising. In other words, our cells are exercising. So every time you're bouncing, you're literally stimulating the blood circulation throughout your whole body. Now, NASA did a very interesting study on this because they compared rebounding to walking on a treadmill. And what they found was that rebounding is 68% more effective than working with a treadmill. One of the primary reasons for this was the joint impact. Anyone who's ever done hard surface work or running will know the key areas that you got to watch are ankle, knee, lower back, hard impact on the body. Now, using the right kind of rebounder, you can reduce the impact to up to 80%, which is essential, especially if you're dealing with a health condition. What they also found was that the delivery of oxygen and the absorption of oxygen can increase up to 4 times. Now, we've mentioned the big problem, oxygen deficiency. So if you can get yourself an invigorating bounce, and some say even 2 minutes can give you the same sort of effect as a 20-minute walk, literally 2 or 3 times a day, what you're actually doing is stimulating that blood circulation to all of the cells, getting more oxygen, and saving yourself a lot of time. The third major factor is the strengthening factor. Every time you go down onto the rebounder, as the pressure builds up, it's kind of like doing cellular push-ups, every little cell in your body. Now, I always tell people I'm a bodybuilder, and of course once the laughter dies down, I explain I'm not a muscle builder, I'm a bodybuilder, because I need to know that every single cell in my body is strong and healthy. So as my body goes down on the rebounder, my cells respond to the environment. This was wonderfully demonstrated by NASA again when the astronauts went into space. Now in space you've got a much lower, if not a microgravity environment. In just 2 weeks, they found that the astronauts would lose up to 15% bone and muscle density. Now I got a feeling if they tested the eyeball or the liver tissue, they'd probably find that those cells had also weakened. Why? Simply because your body is so intelligent. It says, if I don't need to be as strong, then why use the effort? Use it or lose it. Most of us, because we're spending a lot of time sitting, are doing a long-winded version of what the astronauts do when they go to space. Our bodies become weaker. We think it's aging, but essentially what it is we're not using or challenging our bodies as we go through the day. The fourth major benefit of rebounding is balance and coordination. Now, much like the strength that we talked about, few of us challenge our balance and coordination as we get older. In fact, with today's lifestyles, even children are experiencing difficulties with their balance and coordination, and this can be linked to things like learning disability. The unstable surface of the rebounder provides an ideal way to develop balance and coordination, and this is used to great effect by sports people to enhance their performance. And now we come to the fifth major of rebounding. It's one of my favorites, and it's one that most people don't know too much about. There is a torch that you can buy that doesn't use batteries and is based upon something called the Faraday principle of electromagnetic induction. Quite simply, what you do is you shake the torch, and as this little magnet moves up and down inside of this torch electrical environment, it generates electricity. Now, how does that help us? Well, the Earth has a natural magnetic field, and as we've already mentioned, our bodies are electrical. So when we're bouncing up and down on the rebounder, essentially, we're shaking our torch. We're increasing our vibration, we're increasing our energy. Essentially, we're turning our lights on. And that means we're able to use the rebounder to recharge ourselves. Most of us have a time in the day when we're feeling a little flagged. We know why. Maybe we're not moving or breathing. But by grabbing a quick bounce, getting more oxygen to the body, and working with the Earth's natural magnetic field, we can generate a boost of energy which will lift us and help us carry on with our day. Now, there are a couple of really important applications for this energy or bioelectricity. The first, and for me the most important in a health situation, is we can use that energy to target different areas of the body. If you want to think of it like this, if I have a car and the car battery is run down, I ask someone else with a healthy car battery to bring jumper cables, they place them on my car, and as I draw that energy, I allow my car to start itself. Now, if any part of your body is flagging, what you can do is take your jumper cables, which would be your hands, place them gently on the key area of the body, and as you're gently bouncing on the rebounder, by generating energy, you transfer it to that target area. How will you know it's working? Normally your hands warm up, which means circulation is improving, more oxygen is being delivered, and at the same time, as the lymph drains out the waste, you're returning to the dry state and you're encouraging your body to literally start its engines, to start the natural functioning in the body. Again, we don't want to suggest that rebounding heals things. What rebounding does is it helps the body to perform better with more energy. Another area that this, if you like, bioelectricity or energy can be used is to enhance your mind power. Now, mind power is about positive thinking, about setting goals, about achieving the life that you most want. Two of the, if you like, the key ways of doing this are creating affirmations, which are positive statements to constantly reinforce the life or the ideas that you most want, or visualization, where you actually start picturing the life that you want. Now, there's a lot of talk today, and backed up by scientific evidence, that energy follows thought. So if I'm thinking a particular line of thought and I'm increasing the energy, or as some people like to call it, I'm emotionalizing or energizing, creating more enthusiasm for that thought, then essentially I'm going to get a greater benefit from that than if I was just saying willy-nilly. Here's an example for you. If I said, every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. Firstly, I don't believe it, and I'm sure you don't believe me at all. But if I was bouncing and I was filled with energy, and I said, every day, in every way, I'm feeling better and better, on some level, that's much more believable. And what has been shown is that nowadays, more and more people are experiencing these benefits by emotionalizing or energizing their thoughts, their ideas, their goals. Obviously, rebounding creates the opportunities for you to realize your dreams, not the car in the driveway. It is important that the rebounder that you use has a large spring system. You must be using a rebounder with a soft, buoyant bounce that will be absorbing the impact on your body. Because probably the most important factor that we need to bear in mind is rebounding is enjoyable. You must have fun when you're rebounding. So as you can see, the miracle exercise is not really a miracle after all. Now that we understand how it affects the body, now that we understand the amazing benefits that you can get from rebounding, you can expect more energy, more vitality, a better quality of life.